good evening, and for my next reveal, here we go. Welcome, everybody. Hey, what's up? Let's take a look at some pieces. It's very interesting when an artist tries to show their work and how it's perceived and how the images get flat on the internet and all that stuff in between, and how much gets lost in translation of just the social media itself. It's quite fascinating. Nothing better than the in-person experience, unless that in-person experience is inhibited with preconceived anxiety and you can't focus when you're looking at the work, or your phone's going off and you're getting a meeting call. That's neither here nor there. Let's take a look. I wonder what you see when you look at my pieces. Please leave some comments. But I wonder if you see the stages of evolution, the different layers, and more importantly, the depth. Because without the large marks and without the little marks and without the medium-sized marks, you wouldn't get the optical illusion of the switching, flickering image, which is quite fun. Without work that speaks to me emotionally, I just can't really look at someone's art. I can't take it in. It's something that I always thought about as a painter, something that didn't have enough details, didn't have enough work. Someone didn't care over all the areas. I remember when I was younger, I look at pictures and I would say, damn, like part of this was just not thought about. And I can't put something out like that. Even if something is just smudged and left, it's intentional. So all these pieces are seriously developed. I'm not going to put them out. And if I do put them out and then I look at it a few months later, even if it was a hit in the show, I'll take it back and rework it. Everything has to have thought. What's the point? What's the point of showing pitches if it got no thought? But that's what the world is right now. A lot of people putting out pitches without no thought. And that's just not going to help the future of humanity. Because if we become more thoughtful and more present, we might have less problems and more individualism, less cult religion, less cult hate, less cult identity. You are not who you were. You are who you become from your experience, and that is what this picture is about. Let's take a look at these marks. I've been developing these marks for years and years and years, training as a kid, but then taking it more seriously when I was 16, 17, when people started buying my stuff, and then I learned there was an art market. Like, nobody told me that. I didn't know you could do art as a living. I'm lucky that I had a lot of struggle as a kid, financial problems, and I wasn't able to really be a part of the New York scene. Kept me an outsider and on my toes. It kept me strong, and I've always enjoyed that. I feel like it's an upper hand and an underhand at the same time. And it always made me work harder because I had no other option. I didn't have any family connection. So you have to work harder and harder and harder and harder and harder because you got the best paintings in the world, and most people will overlook you because you're not part of their social clique. And that was inherently inside me as a kid. I didn't know about most of any of the artists that are trending now. People say, oh, is this inspired by? I'm like, dude, I didn't know who that was. But I was inspired by Garbage Pail Kids, different horror movies, and some of these rock covers like Iron Maiden, the artists that did that, Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, even some of the Anthrax covers, all the, Crass, Exploited, all the covers of these punk bands were so sick. When I was like 9, 8, 7 years old, 10 years old, they always put so much into it, and everything was really thought about. And that was always an influence on me. And Mad Magazine, another great thing. Cracked. Anyone remember Cracked magazine? That was pretty dope. But all that stuff, that's like what I had. Musclemen, Battle Beasts, and I had the tools of seeing how creative the city is. Also, when I was a kid, was born in 77 during the blackout, like literally the night of the blackout. But, you start seeing stuff when you're 3, 4, 5, like let's say 81, 82. New York City was pretty covered in color. And just a lot of cool stuff, like a lot of great things to see. everything was kind of interesting. So that idea of like everything was interesting and the city was covered in stuff is probably the obsessive component in my work. Also, my grandmother, she lived in Flushing, Queens, and she turned her house into an installation, no joke. Her whole house was covered in medallions, religious quotes, Christmas lights. She built her own sculpture. She had me help her with it. And I was kind of terrified by it. It was difficult because I was like 5, 6, 7, helping her. But it taught me a lot, as I look back. She really built so much, and her house was considered an eyesore. I remember the neighbors hated her, and it was quite difficult because it was kind of, it was a struggle. But she had this crazy, crazy house, and I stayed there all the time. She was my only living grandmother. And anyway, that was quite the impression on me. So this over the top New York, changing, loving Michael Allen Elliott.